What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell. In this episode, we are going to review and grade the free agents that the Baltimore Ravens brought in heading into the 2021 season. Talk about, did they live up to the contract? Was it a smart investment? And much more. But before we get started, give us a like, hit the subscribe button, and click the notification bell to get all your Ravens news and keep you up to date as my phone starts making noise. But Jimmy, who should we start off with? And I guess if you want to give just the whole list of all the guys we'll be talking about.
Yeah. So there was more than this that the Ravens signed in the offseason, but the ones we're going to talk about are 1, Sammy Watkins, 2, Justin Houston, 3, Kevin Zeitler, 4, Derek Wolfe, and I'm missing one, Glenn. There's 5. Oh, gosh.
Bowser?
Memorized. There we go. 5, Tyus Bowser. So those are 5 we'll be talking about. I want to start with Tyus Bowser. The reason I want to start with Tyus Bowser is because he was a former Raven, probably the easiest decision for the Baltimore Ravens. But also, Glenn, the reason I want to start with Tyus Bowser, because of these 5, to me, he gets the highest grade.
That's fair. Yeah.
Led the team in sacks, was relatively healthy. Now, of course, up until the last moment, and heartbreaking that he tore his Achilles, but Cam Akers, brings hope to us all. So, yeah, I think that Tyus Bowser played tremendous this season. He showed a ton of versatility. I think his deal was 4 years and 22 and change overall or something like that. I mean,
bargain.
Crazy cheap. And really does a great job in this system. So I can't give the Ravens anything but an A for that signing. And that's why I wanted to start with 1, Tyus Bowser. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, home run signing for them. A signing that a lot of the pundits and even some, a lot of fans were saying, man, of the 3 guys that were free agents at the outside linebacker position, Matt Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, and then Tyus Bowser, they decided to bring Bowser back, the guy who has the least amount of sack productivity in his career. But he proved to be, he proved them right in the sense that Tyus Bowser just checks more boxes in this Ravens defense than certainly than Yannick Ngakoue does, who's relatively, he's basically a pass rush specialist, and Tyus Bowser is fantastic in coverage. He's good against the run, and he showed this year that he's going to continue to get better as a pass rusher, getting 7 sacks, a number that I don't think many people would have predicted he'd even come, close to. I mean, I think a lot of people were predicting about half of that would be the case. So, and also, yeah, he got hurt in the last game, but he started and played in all 17 games. So the consistency there is also something that you should applaud. And he did have 59 total tackles for the season. So it wasn't just, a one-trick pony. He was a guy who checks a lot of boxes. So, yeah, shout out to them for bringing him back. And by the way, on a much, much cheaper deal, they got him for all 4 years, less than I think New England has to pay per year for Matthew Judon's services. So just from a value standpoint, yeah, I mean, we would like to see him get 12 sacks. Yeah, of course. But, I think from a value standpoint, they had a home run there. Now, the next guy I want to ask you about, I think a guy that doesn't get a lot of love, hasn't been here long, but I think his time here has been really impressive. And that's Kevin Zeitler. Zeitler was really a rock for the middle of this Ravens offensive line, a line that was very tumultuous all around him. But one thing we could always count on was that our right guard would be there and he would perform at a high level. What's your thoughts on his signing?
Yeah, same thing for 2 reasons. One, productivity, and that productivity translated into value in that I think Joe Thuney is at $18 million a year annually. And Kevin Zeitler, while Thuney is probably a better football player, I don't know if he's 4.5 times better. With Kevin Zeitler, I think is at $4 million and a quarter or $4 million or something like that around, as far as average yearly salary.
$4 million and 50,000.
Yeah. So tick over 4 million, call it 4 million. And, so I love another A. because, like you said, rain, snow, sleet, or shine, wife in the delivery room, the dude's working, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen it. He's fostered a great relationship with Bradley Bozeman, and them two, pretty solid duo in comparison to everything else that was going on around them. So yeah, I mean, it's got to be an A, and I'm glad we got him locked up for 2 more years.
Yeah,
Here in
at
Baltimore.
least one more year where the following year, 2023, is a year where they could get out of it. But, if he keeps playing the way he did this year, then I don't see a reason why you wouldn't keep him all the way through that, because he's 31 years old. So it's not like we're
Right.
talking about a guy. And from offensive lineman standpoint, that's certainly not ancient. So, yeah, again, another excellent signing. I think that was really a home run by them. But these next couple I want to get into, I think, get a little bit more dicey. So I want to start with a guy that I think it's hard to argue why this was anything but a complete swing and miss, and it's Derek Wolfe. I gotta ask your feelings on Derek Wolfe, because we were both excited when he got brought back here. We thought, man, this guy was really a rock when the Ravens were pretty beat up in the middle of their defense, and he was another stabilizing force.
Right.
This time on the other side of the ball, but didn't see him at all this year. Ultimately, the back injury eliminated his entire season, but he is still under contract for 2022 and 2023. So what's your thoughts on Derek Wolfe now moving forward? And kind of looking back on his lack of season.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big disappointment, but I don't know if I got to chalk this one up to like an incomplete, right? Like when you drop out of a class in college, you just get a W, right? It's just a withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't go against your GPA, but it is seen on your transcripts. So other people see that you dropped out of a class. So I think that, so what I mean by that is that like, it's a knock in that the Ravens must have known something was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to give him the money anyway. But at the same time, I think that he's not too old and too battered to where there's not still upside in this deal, even though we kind of ate it this year. So, he's definitely going to be important because look, Glenn, I mean, if we lose Calais, if we lose Brandon, if we lose both of them or a combination of the two, Derek Wolfe becomes even more important. So I got to give it an incomplete. I don't know if I can grade it.
Well, I mean, if you're just so if you're grading the entire length of the deal, then it's incomplete. If you're just grading the first year of it, it's
no bueno.
Yeah, it's not very good when he doesn't play a single snap.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one stung a little bit. Now, luckily for the Ravens, it didn't affect their run defense, but who knows how he would have impacted the pass defense, which was dreadful and dead last in the league. So yeah, to me, that was certainly a stumble for the team, but not necessarily one that they could have completely saw coming with the injury. It's hard to predict injuries, but yeah, hopefully he can bounce back, because I think he's going to be here next year. They can save money by cutting him, but his cap number is relatively inexpensive. So if they feel like he can come back, I think he will be back. But this is a big one I want to ask you about, and that's Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins, he certainly came out of the gates hot. He had a great start to the season. I thought
Typical Sammy fashion.
Yeah, I thought he was because right before the season started, there was a lot that there was first of all, when training camp started, there was a lot of excitement around this receiving core. But then we had the injury to Rashad Bateman. We had some injuries to Marquise Brown. We had all of a sudden you start to see some guys going down, and then Sammy came back and kind of fortified the group. But at the end of the season, Jimbo, this guy didn't have a single catch in the last 4 games with the Ravens, and had just 5 catches over the last 6 games. So, I mean, what are your thoughts when you kind of grade his season?
To me like that?
Because he started off really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think overall though, this was a flop for the Ravens. This was when you hit one that's got a lot of pop off the bat, and you think, and you hear the whole crowd, it starts going towards the warning track, and you realize it just dies in the air, and it's got no chance of being a home run, right? So, this was, a C-. I'm being generous. I don't know. I think that's about as good as I can get, because we didn't see him very much, and he looked checked out. Looked like he cashed his check and was ready for vacation halfway through the season, certainly when Lamar was gone. So, now,
does the fact that they got him on such an inexpensive deal, does that Like, do you think that this is definitely his
Right.
one and only year here, or do you think if they can get him back on a similar number, would you be happy to see him back?
No, 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 no. This is one and only year here for sure because there's some guys behind him that are seriously hungry. I want to see Duvernay more involved. I want to see Prochet more involved. Obviously, Bateman, the emergence of him with a Hollywood Brown. Those are 4 guys already, not including the best tight end in the NFL in Mark Andrews and guys in the backfield, Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins and Gus, but definitely J.K. That'll affect the passing game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is it for him. Certainly, I
Yeah,
I
one
wouldn't be surprised.
touchdown, man. One touchdown.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some reason he ends up back in Kansas City for some weird reason.
Well, they at least early on missed his services, but now Byron Pringle seems like he's stepping up to be the guy that they were really searching for early on.
What do
Um,
you grade it?
yeah, I mean, I think a C is about as, and it's disappointing too because we were fans of the signing in that we thought that if he could stay healthy, that he could be a good asset. And I think he
Yeah,
was early on. I mean, he had in the first 4 games, he had 4 catches in every game. So he was certainly impactful early, but after those 4 games, he really, petered off there. And again, had no catches in the last
but
4. So
I do love Sammy as a team player, knowing his role, being a
yeah,
consummate professional, all those things. And hey, like I love Sammy Watkins for those things, but certainly at the end of the day, you got to perform on the field. So let
yeah,
me start. Let me give you the next one. I want to go Justin Houston.
yeah.
What do you think about that? Grade that one out, especially in terms of the production and the contract. What was your take?
Yeah, this one's a toughie for me because I think you needed to have some more firepower in the room. So I was thrilled when they decided to grab Justin Houston. I also thought you needed some veteran leadership to the room when you consider that Bowser at that moment, Bowser was the only vet in the room that well, I guess Purnell was there, but I thought you needed a little bit more leadership there. And Justin Houston definitely brought that. I mean, you saw the young guys immediately embraced him, followed his leadership and certainly took advantage of his tutelage. But another guy, I mean, really just disappeared down the stretch. I mean, a guy who burst onto the scene. He had a pretty good start to his career here, but I mean, really was nothing. I mean, you look at the last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, he had half a sack.
Right.
That, that's very disappointing, especially when you consider the snap totals he was putting up. The guy was playing a ton of snaps, and in those last 6 games, um, he had 1 sack, or he had half a sack, and he had as many as just 2 tackles was his high in any of those games. So it's hard to point to again. Well, because like when we talked about Bowser, he checks so many boxes. How many boxes does Justin Houston really check?
Yeah, like you said about Ngakoue, he's really a specialist there. I'll tell you what I was most disappointed about with Houston this year. I went back and I started looking at some old Justin Houston stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the dude looks skinny to me. Not that he's skinny, but relative to what he was in the past, he didn't look. I know he's getting older, but he didn't look like he was too prepared physically. So that to me
He
was
was a
kind
late
of
signing too. Remember?
yeah, that to me was kind of discouraging when I went back and looked. I was like, man, you know what? This is about as deflated as I've ever seen this guy's biceps. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like what's but you get so far in the league, so many years, you're like, I mean, I'm tired of being in the weight room. And I can understand that as well when you already know how to get the job done. But yeah, I mean, I guess I can give it like a B minus. I like it better than the Sammy signing, certainly, because he was much more productive and on the field more, but
Mhm.
not a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, at least he started and played, and I think
And he was what'd you say? What was his cap hit?
his cap hit was 2.075.
You can't be too mad at it, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think he served a purpose here. Now, do you think that this is his one and only as well as Sammy?
I think he has a better chance of coming back. We'll see what the Ravens do in the draft and in free agency, but I think if he goes anywhere, I would guess that it's Baltimore or somewhere he's been before.
Well, certainly
Um,
somewhere where he has a chance to win too. I think is probably important for him
definitely,
at
definitely.
this point. But yeah, I mean it. So overall, I mean now we talked about these 5 guys, and I know, but I know there's another guy that
Yeah.
you're excited about that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I think my second favorite signing in this offseason behind Kevin Zeitler was Juwan James. He didn't play a snap this season, so it sounds weird. But if you look at his cap hit this year and his cap hit next year and the value there and being a former Pro Bowler and being a potential bookend and answer to that right tackle position next year, along with Ronnie Stanley, making the stress of getting a tackle, hitting a home run in the draft that much less, knowing that we at the very least, have a stopgap that's serviceable and that has played Pro Bowl football is super important. Tons and tons of value there. But Glenn, this is the funny thing to me about these deals, what I was thinking about. Have you ever seen Texas Flip and Move? No. And it's basically these people that buy these houses to then pick them up, right? And they take them to their shop inside their big bays and they redo them. Then they sell them as is. People then take them, they sell them at auction. They take them to their property, wherever to install the house on a foundation, right?
Okay.
So the reason I'm bringing that up is because you buy these houses by looking in the windows, looking around the outside, like kind of doing this. And it's a lot of guesswork, right? And sometimes you hit the jackpot, sometimes you don't, but the houses are like $5,000. So like, what do you lose at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Maybe 20 grand. So like every single house has its issue. This is what happens. You have hit and misses with the Baltimore Ravens because that's usually the type of shopping we do in free agency. Every guy is either older, has an injury past, has, something is there that they're not a perfect prospect, right? And we're just looking for, whatever it is to get the most out of them. So I'm not mad at our signings this offseason. Anyway, I think that's important to.
No, I think that perfectly summarizes what the Juwan James signing was.
Exactly.
Because, if you look at next year, it's his final year under contract. He has a cap hit of $3.2 million, which for a right tackle is insanely low, and yet it's not even a guaranteed year. They could actually save $3 million by cutting him and only have a $250,000 dead money remaining on their. So they could literally they could just let him compete in camp. If they don't like what they see, they could cut him, and $250,000 in dead money is nothing. So I think that's a great signing. It's a very, very low risk. In fact, it's almost, you could almost classify as no risk at all, with a very high reward and the chance to have a right tackle who could play at a Pro Bowl level for you. So I think that I agree with you, is an excellent, excellent signing that unfortunately we won't see the fruits of that until next season at the earliest. And then who knows, he could become a more permanent member of the team because he's 29 years old. So he's still a very young man in football terms. But yeah, so I guess overall it looks like we had 3 pluses or 4 pluses and two negatives when looking over the signings. And then Justin Houston's a bit of a in between, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, up and down. Hopefully they can have a better, run at free agency this upcoming off season. But a lot of their additions, I think, will ultimately come in the draft. When you look at the amount of picks that they have, I'm not sure how many guys they'll bring in, but there'll at least be a couple. So let us know what you guys think of the last year's signings, but also what maybe the Ravens could have learned from those signings and approaching this upcoming free agency period and see how that changes it.
Yep.
Let us know all of your thoughts below, and we will talk soon.